The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, August 5th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, the executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen. On last week's antitrust hearings and on the post office. Then we will hear from the director of research and GiveSmart at Future Now, Aaron Kleinman, on the primaries and even more relevantly, looking towards the states in the November general election. Meanwhile, as the original down goes, 10-term incumbent William Lacey Clay as the original Justice Democrat, Cori Bush wins in a major upset. Up goes Medicaid coverage for over 200,000 Missourians. Shidid Tlaib beats back the establishment-backed challenge, and the Republicans sadly avert disaster in Kansas. Meanwhile, a massive blast in Beirut kills over 100 and wounds thousands. Republicans are too fractured to even negotiate corona relief at this point. Meanwhile, Trump cuts the COVID National Guard funding, except for Texas and Florida. Saudi Arabia expands its nuke program. Congratulations to all you maximum pressure on Iran folks. Democrats introduce a bill banning toxic pesticides. And coronavirus now headed to low-income rural communities and about to lay bare once more the inequality in this country. All this and more on today's program. That story about the where COVID is moving is, we saw that at the front end of this pandemic. I'm not suggesting we're at the back end, but at all, frankly. But we saw it hit particularly like Queens and the Bronx in New York, in areas where they're already in low-income areas, in areas where there's less wealth, broadly speaking, and areas where public hospitals were decimated over the past 5-10 years. And we're about to see that again, except for in the less populated areas, less dense areas, in rural communities, poor rural communities where there are no ICU beds, where there is no facilities to fly people to an ICU bed. It's conceivable, I guess, states will help out with that, but I doubt it. So we're going to see some problems there, and that's just next up on the docket. Meanwhile, we've got great news with Cori Bush yesterday in St. Louis. That is big story. She was the first Justice Democrat in 2018, or the first Democrat who was endorsed by the Justice Democrats. and she won this time around. It's a big boon in multiple reasons. Obviously, you're expanding the size of the squad, as it were. You are also on the Financial Services Committee because Clay was the chair. Everybody moves up a step in seniority, and that is Katie Porter, AOC, a couple others, progressives on there. That's good news. There's a whole lot of good news in this, frankly. And we will talk more about that as the show goes on. And obviously, 200,000 more people getting access to Medicaid is a big deal. And it's interesting to see what's going on in a state like Missouri where, where the desire to expand Medicaid is actually, it is gaining traction in the suburbs, which suggests that there is just a bigger appetite, growing appetite, even amongst the PMCs, as it were, for expansion of social programs. But we'll talk more about that as the program progresses.
Yeah, it's still the Democratic leadership.
So much. If we could just take the dial and just crank it to 10 years from now, and all of those people who are the roadblocks in the Democratic leadership right now age out, as it were, with all due respect to them and me, a lot of these issues would be gone. A lot of them, right? Like even, it was funny watching Hakeem Jeffries, and there's a lot of Democratic establishment, younger people in their 50s who are looking at this and going, oh boy, this is a different Democratic Party. And they're going to be caught. They're going to be caught between their fealty to the past, essentially, and their self-interest that lies in the future. It's going to be interesting. And they're going to see a lot of people start to pivot. How serious they are about it is another question, but at least from a rhetorical standpoint. So folks got to be careful. But let's move on to, we had been reporting months ago that what Rick Scott had done in Florida to the unemployment process, the unemployment system, unemployment payment system, was an outrage. They had specifically built it in such a way to make it very, very difficult for people to get their unemployment, which incidentally they have paid into. Unemployment insurance is paid into by employers, which obviously comes from employees. And this is fascinating because part of the reason why there was such a push to open up Florida was a function of their not having income taxes, them relying on sales taxes, and Florida is just a disaster in a many different ways. And Donald Trump is down there, and DeSantis is down in his popularity significantly. And he is looking for a lifeline. And here it is. Apparently, it comes in the form of throwing Senator Rick Scott under the bus. And by all means, continue.
But I mean, my thing is like a lot of these unemployment systems throughout the country, weren't very good, but a lot of them are like 40, 50 years old. Ours wasn't really old. I mean, ours was really 5, 6 years ago, and it should have been done better for that price tag to produce better results.
Do you believe that the system was in part put together the way it was to discourage people from being able to collect unemployment?
I think that was the animating philosophy. I mean, having studied how it was internally constructed, I think the goal was, for whoever designed it, was let's put as many kind of pointless roadblocks along the way so people just say, oh, the hell with it, I'm not going to do that. And, for me, let's decide on what the benefit is and let's get it out as efficiently as possible. We shouldn't necessarily do these roadblocks to do it. So we have cleared a lot of those, and I waived a lot of requirements through executive order. But I think going forward, I want all our systems, including unemployment, to be user friendly, and it was not user friendly.
Well, that system was designed and implemented during the Rick Scott administration. Do you think that was Rick Scott's intention, was to discourage people from applying for benefits?
I'm not sure if it was his, but I think definitely in terms of how it was internally constructed, it was definitely done in a way to lead to the least number of claims being paid out.
Now, he just happened to be governor at the time. I'm sure somebody was freelancing, right?
How it was internally constructed.
You're a governor, and just somebody internally just like, you know what? I think I'm going to make it hard for everybody to get their unemployment benefits because I, as a middle manager here in the Florida State Unemployment Division, I'm going to get a lot of benefit by putting up these roadblocks.
I love the fake naivety he shows. Like, oh yeah, I studied this and I came to the conclusion that, like, oh yeah, right, we have the best researchers money could buy. Look into this internal workings, and I found something that it's like, yeah, you dumbass. We know you're only acknowledging this because everybody knows this now, and it's such a disaster that even you have to admit it.
In fact, I would go a step further and say his people told that reporter, ask this question. Like he does, like, oh, well, it's funny you should say that because I'm going to throw Rick Scott under the bus. Well, I'm not going to say Rick Scott. I'm just going to say his coincidentally while he was governor. And he says it very, very casually. And he does have this sort of completely naive thing like, oh, I'm throwing this off like it's not, like it's just a fact. And, it's just a challenge for me as a good government type of governor, who cares about getting those benefits out to people.
The buck stops at the internal construction.
Exactly. Yeah, someone internally did it. Here, play that clip of just a throwback to a woman in Starbucks as Rick Scott was running for senator.
It doesn't work. In fact, you cut Medicaid, so I couldn't get Obamacare. You're an asshole. You don't care about working people. I'm not talking to you. You don't care about working people. You should be ashamed to show your face around here.
$1 million jobs.
$1 million jobs? Great. Who here has a great job?
You should.
Or is looking forward to finishing school? You really feel like you have a job coming up? You stripped women of access to public health care. Shame on you, Rick Scott. We depend on those services. Rich people like you don't know what to do. When poor people like us need health services, you cut them. Shame on you, Rick Scott. You're an embarrassment to our
state. Sweet. I love the sweet at the end of that.
That's so good. So good. And now he's getting it from DeSantis. That's great. All right, we got a couple of ads, and then we're going to get to David Dayen in just about 2 or 3 minutes. I want to talk to you about something that I thought that I would never, ever do in my life. And when we were having the toilet paper shortages at the beginning of this thing, I said yes to this. It's the latest in butt cleaning technology, ladies and gentlemen. It's called water. Hello Tushy cleans your butt with a precise stream of fresh water for just $79. Not each time, just a one-time payment. It's actually super easy to set this up. It attaches to your existing toilet. You don't need any electricity. You don't need any additional plumbing. It's literally, if you got a wrench, you can do this. It cuts the toilet paper use by 80%. So the Hello Tushy bidet pays for itself in a few months. And then you also don't have to worry about, toilet paper shortages. You don't wipe it all with Hello Tushy. Even the best two-ply can't cut it when it comes to a hands-free poop experience, ladies and gentlemen. So you can ditch paper products and uncomfortable chafing when you switch to the soothing, cleansing stream of water from Hello Tushy bidet attachment. I got to tell you, Kyle, at the beginning of this thing, said to me, goes, "We just got a bidet, and it's the best thing in the world." And I was like, I don't know. But then these guys reached out, and I was like, I'll try it. And believe me, it is, I won't say it's life-changing, but it's up there. Every Hello Tushy bidet attachment comes with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. You can join millions of Hello Tushy customers right now. Have a clean butt with every flush. Look, it's super easy to attach it. I was a little bit skeptical of the whole process, I'll be honest with you. And you're nervous the first time. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous the first time. And you're like, I can't believe this. And now you understand. Like I grew up, I had no idea what the point was of a bidet. I do now. Believe me on this. This is one of those things I know I'm going to suggest, and people are going to pick it up, and we're going to get emails like, this has been a revelation to me. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Get 10% off. Special offer for our listeners. Go to hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. hellotushy.com/majority. Also, one of the things I've been doing during the pandemic, but actually, frankly, before this, is a way of building a relationship with my daughter so that she'll actually talk to me if I am not on the phone. Hunt a Killer. It's a new way to do game night. Gives us the opportunity to have fun, work together, investigate without even having to leave the house. Hunt a Killer reinvents the way we interact with murder mysteries. You go from being a viewer, safe in the comfort of your own home, sitting on your couch, to an investigator actively involved in solving a case. It's a murder mystery subscription box. It has over 2,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. And what happens is you get a delivery, send it to you every month. They send you documents, they send you evidence, sometimes audio recordings, case files. And what you do is you basically progressively eliminate suspects, and then you figure out who the killer is. You can even join Hunt a Killer's spoiler-free online community. It has over 100,000 members. You can share theories there and help each other out. Basically, what happens is like almost like a different season of like, what was that? What's that show on HBO? I don't watch it anymore, but True Detective or something? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Okay. You know how like on True Detective, every time there would be a new case? That's what this is. So your existing case, I don't know, it's like 6 months or something like that, and then you go on to your next one. It's awesome. And you can set up like, the pins on the bulletin board. You can do the whole thing. You can get deep into this. Believe me. You can get into arguments. Don't go forward without me, please, you say to your daughter. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. Head to huntakiller.com/majority, 20% off. Show your support for the show and have some fun that does not involve a screen. huntakiller.com/majority. And lastly, I happen to be one of those people who believes in reading the ingredients. Somewhat on obviously what I eat, but also what I allow to touch my body. I have always been super skeptical, frankly, of things like soap and deodorant. Now, I use soap, I use deodorant. But I try to avoid a lot of the chemicals that are in it. That's what I like about Native. It has ingredients you've actually heard of, like coconut oil, shea butter, tapioca starch, which I got to admit I had not heard of. It's also vegan, and it's never tested on animals. And I'll tell you, for me, the big thing is I don't want to put aluminum under my arms Switching to an aluminum-free deodorant doesn't have to mean you sacrifice on odor protection. Native will keep you smelling and feeling fresh all day. They have over 10 scents, including rotating seasonals, coconut and vanilla, lavender and rose, cucumber and mint, citrus and herbal, to name a few. For me, of course, I think we all know, I go with the fragrance-free. That's the way I am. And it works great. It's risk-free to try. Every product comes with free shipping within the U.S. Plus, it's a 30-day return and exchange. For me, I go fragrance-free. That's it. But I've also tried the coconut and I've tried the cucumber mint. I like both those too. And of course, I could never even get close to the lavender. Shout out to Michael. This is where Michael would chime in and mock my allergy to lavender. But now you can do what I did. You make the switch to Native today by going to DEO.com/majority. That's DEO.com/majority. Or you can use the promo code majority at checkout. You get 20% off your first order. That's nativedeo.com/majority. And/or you can use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first order. All right, quick break. Be right back with David Dayen. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program the executive editor of the American Prospect, which, let me just say, if you have not visited the Prospect or you do not read Unsanitized, David Dayen's daily email blast, you are making a big mistake if you're interested in knowing what's going on. David Dayen, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Sam.
Oh, and I also should say, author of Monopolized. We just had you on for that as well.
Yes, Monopolized Life in the Age of Corporate Power, wherever you get books.
Now, let's talk about. Let's start with We'll start with the bidets because I know you're terribly interested in that. But then we will go.
I am just interested that I'm glad to hear that you stand behind the products that you advertise.
Well, stand behind. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was very, very well
that was
done.
Subtle. It was subtle.
No,
but it was there.
Yeah. That's right. So, but let's go. Let's go. We'll save that for the end. Let's put a pin in that, as it were. And
let's put a pin in that and then throw it away. But
yeah.
Yes.
Last week there were antitrust hearings. We didn't hear much about them. I think they got overshadowed by the Bill Barr hearing to a certain extent. And just, it is I think it's very hard for people to sort of wrap their heads around the idea of like government functioning in any way right now, including the House, because there haven't been any like the oversight hearings you would expect. But this was sort of a rare, hopefully a glimpse into the near future in terms of two things, in terms of like government going back to actually like doing things that are, that like functioning, right? I mean, in some way, just like looking into an issue and dealing with it. And the other thing is antitrust, which I think like there was going to be a big push on this 4 years ago. People were presuming Hillary Clinton would be the president, and all the antitrust forces were gearing up. And it feels like it's happening again. Your book, Zephyr Teachout's book, et cetera, et cetera. So tell us what happened during this hearing.
Yeah, I mean, it was on the front page of the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal the day after the hearing. So I think it had an impact. I think that impact was buffeted by the fact that the day after the hearings, these same four companies all announced their earnings. And the earnings showed that in a quarter when economic activity fell by 33%, all four of these organizations increased their profits above expectations and brought in over $200 billion in revenue in the quarter.
We're talking, to be clear, we're talking Apple, Google, Facebook,
and Amazon. That's right. So, if anything overshadowed it, it was the fact that the earnings call kind of reinforced the fact that these companies have a tremendous amount of power, and that was what was shown in the hearings. You're right to say that the actual functioning of government that we saw on display on, not entirely, but largely a bipartisan basis. In this hearing, which is the culmination of a year-long investigation that was done solely out of the Antitrust Subcommittee. I mean, sometimes you hear an investigation is going on, and it's really just parroting news reports. But this was an actual investigation where witnesses were gone through, where documents were recovered, where inside information was revealed. And what it showed is that these companies muscle out rivals, take advantage of partners, and aggrandize their power at every step of the way. And most of the CEOs who were questioned at that hearing essentially admitted the charges that were being made by the various members of Congress.
So, like, why did they do that? Like, what were some of the bigger charges? And like, why did they just come in there and think like, these guys aren't going to, this is just, this is a joke, or these guys just so, I guess, full of themselves that they just sort of feel like the idea of a congressman asking me a question that's going to stump me. I mean, how do they come in there and provide this type of fodder? And to a certain extent, let's be clear, it wasn't totally bipartisan. There was, I think there was a significant Republican contingency who wanted to basically talk about shadow banning, but how do they come in there and just sort of, lay it out that?
I think the subcommittee had the goods. I mean, the subcommittee, for example, let's just take Facebook. So the subcommittee had internal documents showing that Mark Zuckerberg and his chief financial officer, when they made the purchase of Instagram in 2012, were talking very openly about the fact that they needed to do this to get rid of a competitor, and that they viewed Instagram as a threat, and that they created essentially a clone of what Instagram did as leverage in the negotiation to acquire the company. In other words, what they said to Instagram was, we're gonna mock up what you do and you can either join us or we're just going to crush you because we have more users than you do, and we'll just steal all of your eyeballs. And they actually did this later with Snapchat, right? They made the same ultimatum to Snapchat. Snapchat said no, and they just copied what Snapchat does. It's called Facebook Stories, and sought to reduce their market share. So, you know, when you have that documentary information, you know, Mark Zuckerberg tried to put a spin on it. He said, well, you know, we thought that we could partner with them and that this would be better for users. And so that's one thing. The second thing is that, I mean, my feeling is these CEOs feel like the laws as interpreted today work in their favor. The Instagram purchase, for example, was approved by the Federal Trade Commission. And in fact, Republicans on the committee said that openly, like, if this was such a problem, why did the Federal Trade Commission approve it, which, you know, is exactly the problem. And they just feel like they'll be able to fight this out among the regulators and in courts. And they, you know, the House Antitrust Subcommittee can bring up all these very clear harms, but in the absence of changing laws and changing personnel, they're kind of insulated, and they've spent lots and lots of money to get that.
So, okay. So what do you say? I mean, you say the clear harms. I mean, what do you say to someone who says like, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, Facebook, you know, they bought Instagram and they have more users. So why can't they do that?
I mean, it's prima facie anti-competitive conduct. Like, you know, it is within, you cannot seek to acquire a monopoly. That is in Section 2 of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The fact that they were able to do it is kind of backwards looking justification.
We're losing you a little bit.
Hello? Am I there?
Yeah, something weird is happening with your phone, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. The fact that they've kind of backwards justified it by saying that you know, the FTC approved it, I mean, that's fine, but the law itself, if you read the letter of the law, they violated it. And you know, Jeff Bezos said something similar. By the way, all these companies have acquired massive amounts of competition in order to secure their power. Jeff Bezos said specifically that we acquire companies in order, you know, because of market position, which is illegal. Like, you can't do that. You can't just acquire a company so that you can monopolize a segment of the market. That is a violation of the Sherman Act as written. The Sherman Act as interpreted over the last 40 years is, you know, why I wrote my book. It's the reason that we've allowed these mergers to sort of be waved through, and why we're in the state that we're in with this massive amount of corporate power that affects our daily lives in myriad ways.
All right, so let's talk. I mean, let's talk about sort of from a practical standpoint. Let's give an example for each of these companies as to like what we could do and the benefits that would accrue from that. So, Facebook, I mean, one of them with things to do would be say like, yeah, you're going to have to spin off Instagram, and you're going to have to like end stories, or you know, or what exactly? Like, what would you do with Facebook to start with? I mean, I imagine also there would be a lot of like, you can't use your data in the way that you're using it for advertising and whatnot. But what else would you do?
Right. I mean, spin-offs and divestitures are one. I think you do go after the business model. I called a few years ago for just banning targeted advertising. This is the problem. You know, another thing that came up in the hearing was the difficulty of publishers to sell any form of advertising that's in any way valuable, because Facebook and Google have commandeered that digital ad market. One way to stop that is to say targeted advertising at a specific individual is not allowed. The U.S. government has plenty of authority to regulate advertising. They do it all the time, tobacco ads and whatnot. And what this would do is allow publishers then to use the aggregate specialness of their audiences to sell ads. So, I mean, we're not banning market research. You can say that the Wall Street Journal readers are largely more affluent and they're interested in business, and so advertisers who cater to those individuals can join us, and they'd be likely to be favorable. That's something that almost doesn't happen right now outside of a few isolated cases, because Facebook and Google can give you that precise market and track that precise person everywhere around the web. So it ruins the ability for an audience to be built on the basis of content, and then to be able to afford to be able to finance that by selling advertising to that audience. So that's one thing, in the case of Facebook.
All right, hold on. I want to make this clear, because I don't think this is a point that people really fully appreciate what it does to all of these publications. I mean, in the case of, let's say, if they got into the audio business, I guess, or whatever it was, it basically means that there's no, they could wipe me out in terms of advertising, because right. The group of people that I'm attracting for this, or theoretically the relationship I have with the audience, would be just overcome by Google and Facebook knowing that, like, oh, these folks are have been bidet curious for whatever.
They've been purchasing. Yeah, they've been scrolling bidet websites, fan sites for days, and so they know to track those individuals. So why would the bidet company go to you? They would go to the people most likely to buy bidets. And yes, that is the larger problem. And by the way, we're seeing in the podcasting market, Spotify kind of taking over a lot of these networks, and the ad tech, which is to move into Google. Google owns both Google and also the ad exchange server where individuals buy advertising, and so they can use that to favor their own products. So a separation there of saying Google cannot run websites where advertising is placed, and also the ad placement auction mechanism. That separation could be an example of one thing you can do.
Okay, and then Amazon, one of the big things would be to prevent them from both having the marketplace, being the marketplace, and then putting their own products and favoring those products in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think a larger thing is banning predatory pricing, which is something that is actually already under the law, technically illegal, and that's selling things well below cost in order to monopolize a particular market segment, and then presumably raising those prices over time. And there's a guy named Shaul Sussman, who's with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, who has laid out a pretty convincing case that Amazon has for years engaged in exactly that, whether by themselves or through their third-party individuals who they tell you have to lower your prices and give us the lowest price possible. This has had the effect of raising prices elsewhere, which, if you're under a consumer welfare standard where price is the important thing, if the effect of Amazon is raising prices elsewhere, then there's a plausible case even under the constrained kind of understanding of antitrust right now. So, that's something to do. There's talk that, Amazon Web Services essentially subsidizes the rest of the business lines, so you cut those business lines. I think that there needs to be some sort of rate regulation. What we've seen with Amazon, and this was brought out in the hearing, is that a few years ago, about 19% of sales of third-party sellers who sell on the Amazon marketplace was going to Amazon, and now that's up to 30%. And when Bezos was asked about this, he said, yeah, but they're getting more stuff from us, like fulfillment by Amazon. And what was left unsaid is that sellers report that they have to buy Amazon services in order to get better placement and get eyeballs on the website. And that's an illegal practice known as tying. You're saying that you have to not only go on our website, but you have to let us do the shipping and let us do the logistics in order for you, and pay us for that, in order for you to make a sale. And you can't just tie those things together. So, there's a credible antitrust case to be made against Amazon over that.
So Apple and Google, Google obviously, having targeting ads, having ads and search functions is a little bit problematic, right?
Monopolizing search, also kind of a tying issue of, website owners who believe that they can't get onto the top page of Google search without buying an ad, because ads now populate the first half of the page on Google search. And so you can't even optimize yourself for high placement in Google search. You have to pay them to be searchable, which is another form of tying. So that could be the basis of a lawsuit. With Apple, it's the App Store, where app developers report very high amounts of fees that have to be given to Apple in exchange for access to iPhone users with their apps. So,
True.
And that has been pretty well documented.
Been there, and very difficult. Like, they wouldn't even let us, when we did the app, our Majority Report app, they would not let us link to our subscription page. So you couldn't even leave the app if the destination was a page where they could decide to become a member. They would not allow us to do the app. And
so they're walling the garden so that what you're describing is sort of living under the private law of Apple. So Apple created this market, and now they govern it. And there's no sort of outside regulatory standards other than what Apple creates. It's kind of the fallacy of deregulation. There's no deregulation. There's regulation by Apple in this case, or by Amazon, or by Google, or by Facebook. That's what happens when we get deregulation. It's now being done in the name of private interest for their own benefit, rather than the name of public interest for the public good.
And what do you say to the argument of like, well, but if you do what you're talking about with Apple, where's their incentive to develop the iPhone?
the $700 that they make on the iPhone? I mean, that just seems like an absurd question. The majority of Apple's funding or revenue comes from the manufacturing and sale of hardware. The fact that they're leveraging this app market is just, sort of an icing on the cake, and it's being done in a way that stunts the development and growth of entrepreneurs that want to deliver their whatever talent or that they have using these apps.
I mean, I just, because I think there are, sort of people out there who just assume like, well, if Apple built it, why can't they completely control it regardless of what it does to the rest of society? And, it's.
And I mean, I guess the answer is that we created a system 100 years ago that said that no one company can control society, can control markets in this fashion. We made a determination, and Congress has not repealed it, that competition is healthy, and the way in which a regulated capitalism can move forward, that these antitrust and anti-monopoly laws are essential so that you don't get runaway inequality, stagnant wages. Are all these things sounding familiar as to what we're experiencing right now? So you don't get all that stuff.
And we should say, I just want to remind people too. I mean, because again, people go out and they're making arguments to their uncles or their nieces, or I don't know why, any of their friends, their coworkers, their family. We also have other laws in our society, like the president's not allowed to be a king or a queen, or, I mean, like society is set up with this way. These are all decisions that we make. There are no natural rights of a company. A company does not exist in nature. There are no natural rights. We decide what kind of society we want. We also, say that meat processors can't, if some rat feces fall into the hamburger, they can't sell it. There shouldn't be rat feces, it's even though that they have their own machines and whatnot. And
another law that we created in the past is the RICO laws, racketeering and corruption laws. And when you watch these hearings, you really got the sense that what you were watching were a bunch of racketeers. They were talking about how they intimidate their rivals, how they create a climate of fear among their partners and suppliers. There weren't a lot of consumers on display. It was just about how everybody that associates with these companies ends up, in a method of fear against them. And, we have racketeering laws to deal with that as well. So, you're absolutely right. We decide to create this society, and no government has no private government in terms of corporation has a right to profit, has a right to control.
Give me a sense, and I know that we talked about this, but I mean, where do you think is Congress further out ahead of this than you thought that they were?
Well, I think Congress, in this case, you're talking about this subcommittee,
right?
Which is, there are 15 people who, among the 435 members, who have really looked at this issue. They are the members of the subcommittee, and what they found was enough for them to be, very aggressive towards these particular companies, because this investigation was only about the tech industry, and our monopoly problem goes well beyond the tech industry, going into health and agriculture and transportation and what have you. But when they dug in on these issues, this is what they found, and the result of that is going to be a report, and the report is going to either suggest remedies for these companies or new legislation to deal with these companies, or new gaps in enforcement of the existing laws that the antitrust agencies, namely the Federal Trade Commission and the Justice Department, need to address. So it's going to be one of those three things, or probably all of those three things. And that's going to be the blueprint, I feel, for the next Congress and the next administration. So we'll have a new group come in, and there'll be a yardstick here. Here's a report that says these are the things that you have to undertake if you want to live up to this ideal notion that we need. We can't have concentrated power in the hands of a few dictating the whims of our economy and our society. So the choice will be very clear.
All right. So let's just move on. One other quick topic while I got you here, just a couple of minutes on this. And that is the post office. You and I have talked about the post office probably more than any two people that I've ever been aware of, anyways, over the years.
More than the Postmaster General and the Deputy Postmaster General.
There have been multiple occasions where there was, I remember, we were hoping that I think it was Obama would appoint the right people to the
Board of Governors,
the post office Board of Governors, and talking about postal banking. I'm hoping to have the head of the post office workers union on in a couple of days and whatnot. But in the meantime, what's your sense? Like, how dire is this? Because I've had conversations with people just randomly. Like, I was getting a pair of glasses and the guy was like, it's going to take 2 weeks because the post office has just been, horrible lately. And a friend of mine who is, trying to wait on some some material because she's, making some, designing some stuff, and said, like, it's been sitting in the post office for a week and I can see it. Like, I'm tracking it. It's just not leaving the post office.
Yeah.
Well, like,
I mean, this is more than anecdotal. We know that the new Postmaster General who's come in, his name's Louis DeJoy. He was the CEO of a logistics firm and also was a huge Trump donor. And he has come in and he's cut the ability for postal workers to use overtime. And he has instituted standards such that you go out with the mail that you have, and if there's other mail at the sorting office, you leave it behind. I mean, he has said that very directly in memos and in directives, and that feeds on itself. If you have, mail keeps coming. So if you leave some behind one day, then you leave a little bit more the next day and a little bit more, and you get this tremendous backlog that we appear to be seeing. So it's not a joke. It's not just 3 people saying I'm having trouble getting my mail.
Right.
And it's important to say that before this point, there was no, like, in international surveys, no international post office did better than the United States. I mean, anyone that's gone abroad and sent a postcard knows that it takes a long, long time for those postcards to get back. And that's kind of, the way in which certain countries operate. But it wasn't the way that the United States operated. I mean, postal, the post office was seen as a model of efficiency and reliability. And the attempt is clearly being made to rip that away.
And universality. I mean, this is the thing that's also amazing about it, is that every other country you compare this to do not have for the most part, do not have their population so spread out and having people live in such, sort of like, nether regions, as it were. And okay, but how lasting? All right. So Joe Biden becomes president, knock on wood. And on day one, new Postmaster General, does everything get fixed? Or is this going to inhibit and vote by mail is another issue. From my perspective, it seems like a twofer, right? Like, they want to debilitate the post office. Short term, it's going to have the impact of making it very hard to get ballots in on time. But midterm, it's also going to sort of like turn people away from the post office because they don't know what you just told me. They just know, like, I can't rely on the post office anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, how how elastic is that? Or I guess
I don't know. I don't know how you're going to be able to bounce back. I mean, this is really serious stuff. It's not. It's more than ballots, right? It's these small businesses that rely on shipping for their entire business. It's prescription drugs that are sent often through the mail, more and more actually, as pharmacies become mail order pharmacies and use the postal service for that purpose. This is a major short-term problem that goes even beyond the election, even though the election is obviously very important. Long-term, I mean, yes, they're trying to make the case for privatization, to give up the monopoly on the mailbox to UPS and FedEx, and to put the post office, essentially destroy the post office.
Who's going to investigate this?
I mean, what's that?
Is there a congressional committee that is going to investigate this? I mean, you have a logistics guy come in, right? His whole business is designed to either make an operation like the post office of run efficiently or inefficiently. Like, my guess is they just, who know, they must have done some type of operational study even before this guy got appointed that indicated here are some pressure points. If you do this or that, these two levers essentially that you pull, it's going to make the whole system, it's going to slow the system to a crawl. Like someone should investigate.
The Postmaster General is actually meeting with Schumer and Pelosi and the two officials at the White House who are negotiating this coronavirus relief package, Meadows and Mnuchin. They're meeting today. So that's number one. I know Bill Pascrell and some other members on the Committee of Jurisdiction has demanded some answers.
What committee is it?
So we could see. I think it's Ways and Means. They want to look into this. In the Senate side, it's government. It's Homeland Security and Government Affairs, but I'm not sure exactly who the House Committee of Jurisdiction is.
Well,
I think it's Ways and Means.
David Dayen, we got to wrap up here. I got to tell you, the idea of Pelosi and Schumer talking and meeting about it, that guess what that doesn't do for me.
It's not great, but it's a high level. It does suggest a high level of attention. So we definitely need more congressional inquiry into it.
David Dayen, it is always a pleasure. Like I said at the top of this, A, everybody should be reading the American Prospect. B, everybody should be reading Unsanitized every morning. And C, you should get a bidet. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. David Dayen, ladies and gentlemen. All right. We're not going to do, this is going to be completely seamless here. Is Aaron the highlighted one?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Let's bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Kleinman, he is the Director of Research at Future Now and at GiveSmart. And he's also, what is it, Bobby Big Wheel on Twitter?
Yeah, I chose that as my Deadspin username about 12 years ago, and it's kind of stuck.
There you go. Welcome back to the program, Aaron. So I want to talk about your the thing that you guys have put out. Where is it? The State of the States report. I want to talk about that in a moment, but let's go over what happened yesterday, because big deal, right? I mean, it's a big deal yesterday.
It was. And in the primaries yesterday, you saw, real patterns emerge in the Democratic and Republican primaries. In the Democratic primaries, what you really saw was that the primary voters want to see a sense of urgency. Democratic primary voters have by and large been marching in the streets, shoulder to shoulder, for the past few months, demanding a better life. And if they don't see a politician as either standing shoulder to shoulder with them, or as at the very least not sensing that same sense of urgency as them, then they will vote against them. And I think obviously Cori Bush beating Lacey Clay was probably the biggest example of that. But I've been on this show before, and we've been talking about this has been going on in Democratic legislative primaries in so many states, Pennsylvania, New York, New Mexico, for the past few months. It's a nationwide phenomenon that's happening where Democratic primary voters really expect that their representatives to deliver for them and feel the same sense of urgency as them. And then, go ahead. Yeah, and then on the other hand, you have Republican primaries. And so the biggest profile one was the Kansas Senate race, but that's kind of an outlier. If you look at everything, and, it's also this multi-million-dollar thing where the national parties are involved, and that can kind of distort things a bit. But what we saw, there are three states that had primaries this day where we're really involved, and that would be Michigan, Kansas, and Arizona. In Michigan, you saw Republicans turn back well-funded, kind of DeVos-backed candidates in primaries for people who were really involved in the Reopen protests in Michigan. If you remember those back in April, really kind of fringe right-winger storming the state capitol with assault weapons type stuff. In Kansas, you saw a lot of moderates in suburban districts lose their primaries to conservatives, and really, it will make it much easier for Democrats to break the Republican supermajority in that state. And then in Arizona, you had two really kind of like swingy state Senate districts where Republicans nominated QAnon believers. And so on the Republican side, you're kind of seeing Trump, the party is increasingly looking like Trump. And I think there's a lot of talk about what happens to the Republican Party after Trump, whenever that happens. And I mean, he has made permanent changes to the party, and it reflects him now.
Well, first off, let me just say that I've been here before, and I'm going to recognize that and just put down that marker. But I'm also going to say that this is not a function of Trump. This is, it seems to me, the natural progression of the Republican Party. Trump is a function of the natural progression of the Republican Party. It doesn't work the other way, it seems to me. Like this.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, obviously the party has basically, as it has become increasingly in hock to special interests, it has a kind of less and less appealing actual policy program. So it's had to lean more and more into nationalism, which is kind of how you end up with Trump and basically his band of cronies looting the federal government, and how the Republican Party just goes along with it. And so, yeah, you're right that he's basically left the party with that. And I think, when I come back to Trump and kind of his permanent effect on it, it's really just like the conspiracy fringe stuff of it, where, that really has, like the whole QAnon thing to me is, it really is shocking just how quickly that has taken hold in really mainstream Republican politics. And I think that is something that you can attribute to Trump.
Maybe, but also I would say in 1988, you had Rush Limbaugh talking about Hillary Clinton murdering Vince Foster and dragging his body into the park. I mean, even pre-Trump, I remember specifically, I bet you Matt, and I don't know if Brendan was around at the time, but Dana Loesch, when she was doing her NRA TV, she had on, I just remember this moment, Ajit Pai, I think it was. Was that the guy? Is he the guy who was the FCC?
He's Reese's mug guy, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when Ajit Pai was on there and they were talking about net neutrality, so this must have been 14, I can't remember when it was. She said to him in the course of a conversation, I'm surprised you haven't been Vince Fostered. That's it. That's all she said.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you haven't been Vince Fostered. And I asked these guys in the office, I'm like, do you have any idea what that means? So I had no idea whatsoever. And I had to explain to them the whole thing about, like, they think that Hillary Clinton killed Vince Foster and dragged his body into the park. And, like, if she can say that on a radio show with the confidence that her audience is going to know what she's talking about, in 2014, fully 25 years after the fact that Vince Foster died, maybe 21 years, there was a big strain of this in the party. Now, Donald Trump may have accelerated a little bit, and I don't want to get caught up on this point, but I just, this is the trajectory the Republican Party has been on. Trump may have bent the curve a little bit upwards or accelerated it, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, it really, it shows you that there's just very little resistance to that left anymore. Whereas, I would say, listen, nobody in the Republican Party of the past 20 years was certainly trying to stop making fools of yourself and going on Limbaugh. No, they'd go along with it. But now it's, they're getting high off their own supply, basically. And, the supposed adults in the room all actually think that, John Podesta is running a child sex trafficking ring out of the basement of a DC pizza restaurant.
Correct.
And so without, there's just no guardrails left. And so that's kind of how you have, basically this fringe taking over the party.
Okay. So that's happening on the right. And we're going to see, presumably we're going to see more of this, and that there may be just an inability at this point to push to beat that back on some level, going down the road. I mean, we will see. Let me ask you this one dynamic, okay, that's sort of tied into that notion that the Republican Party continues to sort of like head towards the margins. Saw these some of these stats from that guy Wasserman on Twitter. In 2016, suburban St. Louis County voted 55% to 39% for Hillary Clinton. 2018, it voted 62% to 36% for Claire McCaskill. She ended up losing anyways, but in 2020, it voted 73 to 27% to expand Medicaid. Are we seeing like how does that story relate to the QAnon story, or does it? Like, how much of a danger is there that we are getting? Like what's going on there? Is that the PMCs are moving to the left, or is it that, or what?
I think that's exactly it. And I think part polarization in ideology, it's not kind of a one-way street. It's a constant feedback loop. And so, when Donald Trump polarizes, you mentioned a suburban county in Missouri, for example, he has polarized, many of the kind of, formerly maybe Mitt Romney voters, minivan driving, well-off professionals who, kind of don't want radical change, but, they certainly don't believe, again, that, Vince Foster was dragged into a park after Hillary Clinton secretly murdered him. And so, Donald Trump drives those people away from the Republican Party because he's so anathema to kind of, their beliefs to kind of, he's crass, vulgar. He really kind of shows kind of this ugly nativism that they thought that they were above. But when he does that, they also kind of, because of the nature of the two-party system, they're driven to the Democratic Party. And basically, in order to kind of fit in order to oppose Donald Trump, they also adopt the policy positions of the Democratic Party as well. And it's not something that just kind of happens right away. It's something that, it's a gradual process. But I think, a lot of the fears that I think some people on the left had of, the fact that the party is, moving to is moving to its strength in the suburbs, that means they'll move to the right. Well, no, that hasn't really happened. And then again, if you go back to our report, you'll see that a lot of these big, battlegrounds, in 2020 in the election, they, especially in like state legislative races as well, they really tend to be in suburbs, and the candidates running there are not like pro-austerity Mitt Romney types. I mean, they want to make it so that people can have affordable health care and good schools and clean water, things that, the Democratic Party, has really stood for in the past to help improve people's lives.
Okay, so let's turn to that report. And is that report, is your report that you put out? I guess you put it out the end of July. Is it available to anybody?
It's available to anyone who wants it. It's on futurenow.org, our website. You can also follow me on Twitter, Bobby Bigwheel. I have it as my pinned tweet. Whatever is easiest for you. We just want you to download it and read it. It's for anyone to look through. That I find a little bit annoying because I thought like I was getting like a special report that would make me seem smarter about this stuff. The sneak preview thing.
Oh, all right. Well, all right. I guess that's something. But so in general, I mean, there's you basically look at how the electorate largely has changed in terms of demographics. You look at who within the electorate has changed. You look at what the impact of COVID and the George Floyd protests make. You also talk about third party vote, and then you talk about the disco stew fallacy, which I did not know what that was, but I do know now, which is that when I don't know who Stu was, but at one point it looked like disco records were, had shot up to the charts in 1976. And if this trend holds, there's going to be nothing but disco. And disco was a bit of a blip.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
What trends are holding? Like, is the QAnon trend going to hold? Like, what trends are holding, A, broadly speaking, in terms of the electorate, and B, what's going to happen in these are the key states to be looking at in terms of state elections and where are they trending?
Yeah. So I think, we look at kind of the 2012, 2016 trends, and we see, oh my God, Democrats are losing white working class voters in droves. They're just going to keep leaving the Democratic Party. They really just need to kind of max out college educated voters and non-white voters as well. And, a lot of people have assumed that trend would hold. But what we actually have seen was in the 2018 midterms, Democrats' biggest gain among any demographic group was actually among white working class voters. And their biggest gains geographically came in rural areas. Now, what does that mean in practice? It means that, rural areas would have gone from, voting maybe 35% for Clinton to maybe 42% or something for another Democrat. But, in a statewide election, that's a huge difference. If, one thing I like to say is if Joe Biden gets Hillary Clinton's margins in the suburbs and John Kerry's margins in rural areas, he's winning in a landslide. But another trend that people, kind of assume will hold, but we touched on the report that really isn't, is Republicans keep making inroads among non-white voters, especially younger male non-white voters. And so when you're looking at kind of how does that manifest itself? And so, obviously there's, when we're looking at the battlefield, I think, states like Iowa, for example, or Montana, or even Texas, which we're in, there's so much room for growth for Democrats in areas that you might not think. And that, again, a state like Iowa, if Joe Biden ends up disproportionately improving his standing with white voters, it's going to be in the middle of the pack of swing states. Don't assume that all these past trends are going to kind of constantly hold, and look at kind of broadly where the opportunities are for Democrats. And they're not all just kind of upscale suburbs. There might be in places like Benton Harbor, Michigan, or Muscatine, Iowa, or Flagstaff, Arizona. And so again, I want to make sure that people keep an open mind that we don't quite know where exactly the closest races are going to be, but we kind of need to prepare for a wide range of outcomes and make sure that the Democrats in all those races are fully resourced.
Well, I just want to touch on the thing you said that the Republicans are making inroads with men of color ages 18 to 24. Is that what you said?
Not necessarily. I mean, I would say younger, so I mean maybe under like 40 or so. We've seen it. It's a trend that's been manifesting itself. There are a lot of different theories about it. Whether it's kind of, I think broadly it kind of ties, to institutions in those communities, in some communities like the Church for African Americans, for example, is losing power. And that has really been a pillar of Democratic strength in the past, and so that could be leading to some of it.
Now, when you say men of color, like when you say men of color, are we talking black people? Are we talking?
I would say black, Latino. I haven't seen as many surveys of Asian or Native American. But broadly, there, we have seen among, non-white voters as a whole, just Democrats are not achieving their Obama era margins among them. And again, those were very high margins, and it's hard to kind of keep that going forever.
Right.
It's just kind of, again, it's the nature of, don't assume that all these past trends will hold. And it is a dynamic, the electors are kind of this dynamic, kind of tough to discern sometimes thing. And again, the real main takeaway is that we have to be mindful that there's a broad array of potential areas where we can, win state legislative seats and improve people's lives through state legislative seats that, this election should really be seen as a big opportunity in that regard.
I know your whole pitch is that if you want your dollar to pack as much punch as possible, you should be looking at state races. Here's an opportunity. Give me 3 states and or races that if, I came to you and I said, Aaron, I want my dollar to make the biggest difference possibly politically. who should I give it to? Like, what race do I want to contribute to that is going to flip a seat in a state, that will flip a legislator, that will get people Medicaid, that will get people, that will protect a woman's right to choose, that will allow for a higher minimum wage, and that, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, so I'm happy to give you three. So three, I think, of the really top ones are Arizona. Arizona, we are basically 2 seats shy of flipping the Senate, 1 of flipping the House there. You get a Democratic legislature there. That's been a site of really big education, funding protests. I would say North Carolina, where we're so close in the state house there. That's a state where narrow special interests led by this billionaire Art Pope really wreaked havoc on that state's infrastructure. And Montana, a state that a lot of people don't necessarily think of as a swing state, but it's also a state where it's really cheap, where you have a lot of great Democratic candidates, and where if Democrats can flip the House there, they can really make big strides in that state. And actually, in a few weeks, we'll be launching our Give Smart program. So keep your eyes out for that. Again, I'll be futurenow.org or Bobby Big Wheel on Twitter. You can find it through either of those venues. And that's where we will actually be giving you maybe right now we're thinking the top 8 races at that moment where your dollar will go the furthest across the states where the campaign finance rules make it so that small donors make the biggest difference. And we really want to make sure that, if you want to make the biggest difference in, whatever legislative race is possible, we want to be able to give you the places where really at that moment, the small donors make the biggest difference.
Aaron Kleinman, always a pleasure. Future Now, check it out. People can go and find that report that you made, and we'll keep an eye out for the Give Smart recommendations.
All right.
Thanks
so much, Sam.
Despite the disco stew fallacy, my projection of the value of you appearing on this show has been unwavering. So I'm glad to say.
I swear that's not a fallacy.
No. All right. Thanks. I appreciate it, Aaron. Take it easy. Bye.
Thanks so much, Sam. Take care. Bye.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break. Head into the fun half. Gave you a bunch of free show today, ladies and gentlemen. But occasionally we do that. We never shortchange on the free show. I don't know why. I don't even know what shortchange would mean. We set out when we started this show, it was supposed to be 45 minutes. We never do 45 minutes. And then it was supposed to be, the whole show was supposed to be an hour and a half? Somehow it just kept growing and growing. So you can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show. You also get extra content every single day, almost. Also, amquickie.com. Well, frankly, your membership on the Majority Report, it also supports AM Quickie at this point. Hopefully we're going to get it to the point where we can start to sell some advertising against it. But it is, and people are really enjoying the show. So the more people who go there and check it out, amquickie.com. You can also see it on YouTube at our other YouTube channel, youtube.com/Majority Report Live. And but you can also you get it any podcast thing. And let me make a I just got this IM and from Cold Feet Chowder. Oh, where did it go? Pac-Man at 917,000 YouTube subscribers, while MR is still at 910,000. The gap is growing. I don't know what is he doing over there?
He probably bought ads or something.
Did he buy ads?
YouTube ads. That's my
I don't
guess.
know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what he's got going over there. Folks, this is a problem. I know I'm getting emails saying that I shouldn't be so competitive with him. But I'm sorry. Everyone's got to go out there and tell your family members and your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is important stuff. So if you're listening to this, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell your friends. Tell your kids. Your kids should be forcing your kids to subscribe to this channel. All right, so check that out. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And remember, I want to continue to introduce you. I mean, we've introduced you many times to one of the coolest sponsors we've had, Hunt a Killer. It's a murder mystery subscription in a box. It's one of the most unique games out there, and it brings the fun of an escape room to your home. Check it out. Go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. That's huntakiller.com/majority. Promo code majority. Also, check out Nomiki's show. You can find it at patreon.com/the Nomiki Show or youtube.com/the Nomiki Show. You know, we talk about Cori Bush, her big win in St. Louis. You can find the long interview that Nomiki did with Cori months ago. Check that out on her channel, and also just check out for this week's show. If you want to know where the next great progressive congresswoman is coming from, you've got to be watching Nomi's show. So check that out. Also, Jamie, you there?
Yes, I am. Is this me?
What's happening on the Intifada this week?
Hello. All right. Well, this week on the Antifada, we have a hot, fresh episode for you. I was away over the weekend, but we had Jake Flores filling in for me on the mic. They did a little interview with Tana Geneva, a writer for The Appeal and The Intercept, about all of the horrible malfeasance going on in the NYPD, their permissive culture towards rapists and other abusers, and the utter failure of local government to implement reforms or enforce the reforms that have been implemented. Also, they talk a little bit with Jake about his new podcast, Why You Mad, and theories of comedy and class war. Also, still good, our Hong Kong episode from last week. I'm proud that we did that. Oh, let me turn on my video. Made a few tankies mad, but I think most of the listeners appreciated the nuance that we explored. So those are both free to listen to right now. Patreon.com/theantifada or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Matt, what's happening on your end?
Last night we did an episode of TMBS with Alicia Brooks and David Griscom. We talked about Bolivia, talked about Venezuela, and we took a Q&A, sort of almost a return to a normal show-ish last night. So check that out at patreon.com/TMBS.
I assume you had on David Pakman for that?
No, Pakman has not joined the show yet. Yeah, Literary Hangover, twitch.tv/Literary Hangover. I'll be streaming on there at some point, too.
All right, quick break. Into the fun half, 646-257-3920 is the number.
Oh, sorry, I'll take that. 1 second, Brendan.
Bueller?
Here it is, sorry.
Bueller.
You can't just say whatever.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we're gonna go. Okay. Welcome back. Fun half, ladies and gentlemen. We'll read a couple IMs, then we'll take some calls. Maybe we'll do some videos. Jamie and I will talk, and Matt and Brendan will chime in, and that's how things are going to go. That is my prediction. Sam, just wanted to share my experience, writes Left Coast Lefty, from last Thursday's show. When the interview started with Michael speaking, it slapped me across the face emotionally. I had a visceral reaction to his voice. It hit me deeply, but almost immediately after I settled in, listened to an amazing interview. About halfway through, I started thinking about the hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of Michael's work on tape, much of it evergreen, and it gave me comfort. I believe that every Thursday potentially could be an epic event that honors Michael Brooks having Binder with his easy laugh and seriousness of the day blending seamlessly with the gang had me up on my seat and at times actually laughing out loud. It felt good, and I hope it continues for the foreseeable future. Rest in peace and power, Michael. Yeah, we're going to do that. The plan is right now to do what we did last Thursday for all the Thursdays in August. And then, I'm not sure what we're going to do after that, but that's what the plan is for Thursday. It is cruel, says Beat the Reaper, to not let the 6-year-old to read the part of the Hello Tushy ad. Yeah, I know. Saul would have enjoyed that. Let's see.
Fun fact, Hassan Piker has one of those bidets in his bathroom when I went over there. So
is that right?
Yeah, I don't know what brand it was, but those do seem pretty popular.
Yeah, I can understand it. I can understand it now. I understand it now. I mean, going to the phones, calling from a 508 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Worcester Mike.
Worcester Mike.
From Worcester Mike. That's right. Actually, though, unfortunately, I now live in the Great Plains states of Nebraska.
Oh, all right. Well, whatever.
Maybe not unfortunately, but I do. So,
Mike,
I was figuring.
Mike,
go ahead.
Back off your phone for a minute, okay? Because it's a little bit.
Is that
it's a little bit hot. Yeah, just take it easy, buddy. Back off.
That's better.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm excited. I thought I would call to give you just a sense of what's going on in our school district for the going back to school.
Okay.
So our kids go back to school on the 11th of August, which is next Tuesday. And 2 weeks ago, they released their plan that we will have a virtual plan as well. So they basically were 100% in person until, and actually, I'm sorry, it was not 2 weeks ago, it was last week. So last week on Tuesday, they said, and I quote, "If you are genuinely concerned about your children, you can sign them up for the virtual classroom, but they will not be part of the school system, so they will not be in the classroom with their friends or their actual teacher. It'll be a whole other set of teachers." They had a Q&A session virtually on Tuesday. They got 1,800 questions about what they're going to do with reopening, how they're going to close it, what happens if somebody gets sick, all the questions that parents have. They said they would answer those questions, but it will take them a little while because there's 1,800. Then they released on Wednesday the sign up for virtual, and they gave you until Friday of that week to sign your kid up for virtual. And if you didn't, then you had to go in person. So they announced it on Monday. They educated us about it on Tuesday, and they expected you to fully register by Friday. And they still haven't sent out the 18 answers to the 1,800 questions. So anyway, that's how they're doing it here.
Well, I appreciate the call, Mike. I mean, I can tell you that in New York, anyways, what's happening is not too dissimilar. However, I mean, we have to declare by Friday of this week whether our kids are going fully remote or what they call blended, which is 2 days, 1 week, 3 days the next week in school, and the rest of the time out of the school. If you're in one or two of those categories, you cannot, you don't mix. It's the same situation as there. My understanding is that teachers who are older or have immune system issues will be teaching the remote classes. And so you will not see your teacher, I guess. I mean, it's a new year, so you wouldn't have seen them anyway. You wouldn't even know who they are necessarily if you opt in. You won't be in with your friends. You'll be in with other, but your friends aren't, you don't know what classes you're going to be in anyways. So you're going to be in with like a whole nother, you're going to be in basically a separate track. Now, the difference is that with us is that at any time, is my understanding, you can drop out of the blended and go to the fully remote. And 4 times during the year, you can go from fully remote into the blended, like almost like an open enrollment period that you would see in insurance. But this is 4 times a year. The problem is, of course, that it's basically like transferring to a different school once you do that. But, we still haven't made our decision. I don't know that it's going to be the same for both the kids. My heart goes out to the teachers because, well, obviously they're in the most risk, I think, in all these situations. But they're not, the schools are just not getting the support. There's no national guidance. There's no even state guidance, as far as I can tell. I mean, it really is horrific. And I, we've been talking to some other parents about setting up a pod, and then we're like, well, is this a pod for the days they're not in school? Or are we talking about doing a pod where it's like, they're not going to go, they'll just do remote? And on one hand, you're like, well, if it's a pod when they're not in school, then you're increasing like the problems, unless these are kids who are in their classroom already, because you're combining two different sort of like networks essentially. And then the other question is like, okay, and how much are we exacerbating the general inequality of what's going on with something like this? Because this is, we have the opportunity to sort of like pool our resources and get maybe like, a single, babysitter or a paraprofessional or something like that. I mean, there is, and then it's also like, okay, are we helping though the school system because they only want half the kids in there at any given point? And if we have enough kids that opt out to just virtual only, I mean, it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
It doesn't sound great. I was going to ask you actually what you think of all of the sort of well-to-do parents who are hiring their own private instructors and getting together their own backyard micro schools. Because to me, on the one hand, obviously it's probably not helping public education. It's not helping equality, but like that would be a good thing if the state would pay for everyone to have that, right?
I mean, it would. I think so. I mean, it would, if you had them all separated, it would diminish the risk to teachers. I don't know how you would actually go about doing that. Like, where would you find the space, right? Like, and if the schools had enough time that maybe they could isolate like the classrooms in that way, and maybe they'll be able to do it. I'm with you on the exacerbating. But it's if they stay in the remote program for the school, then the school still gets the funding. They are still considered students of the school. I have mixed feelings about what you're talking about because it really is an existing problem of inequality. In the short run, that helps the school. The fact that like maybe 50 kids are going to be, in 5 different or 10 different backyards, it helps the school, right? Because the less students they have, but that they have credit for teaching, gives them more resources per student and makes it logistically easier to do it. At the same time, it also just feels like all we're doing is exacerbating the pre-existing inequality. But I don't know if if that becomes a priority during this instance, when it's also talking about like, it's diminishing risk to the teachers. It's a horrible dilemma. I mean, I don't have an answer to any of it. I mean, at one point, like, we're going to have to get some type of childcare. And that's like, well, if we're getting, childcare, maybe we diminish the risk to everybody by making that just one person who is also helping with school, right? Because if I add another person to the pod, which is a babysitter, so that my ex and I can go to work or be at work, then that person is also touching my kid, not physically. I mean, but I'm saying like in terms of potential contagion. Then my kid takes that into school. So that's one more person that my kid is exposed to that could possibly infect the people in school, and vice versa. I mean, the whole point is, right, we're trying to like keep networks separate. It's just it would be a challenging thing with funding and some form of consistent message that people could believe coming from a national government. but we don't have those two things. And so then it becomes almost impossible. I mean, I think like, look, I don't feel like we have a sense of what the risk is. Right here on my computer, I have, where is it? I have, on one hand, I have a report put out by a bunch of pediatricians. On another hand, I have, stories that are coming from Georgia. Like, we don't have, it's very difficult to sort of parse through this. My sense is elementary school kids, probably they are the safest. They may not communicate it in the same way that older kids do. You still have teachers who are in danger there, and teachers are in danger of the other, each teacher also endangers each other. I mean, it's like going into work without masks. It's a mess. Here is Donald Trump calling in to Fox and Friends. Now, it's like, I can express this type of frustration. The frustration is real. The misinformation is real, but there's only so much I can do about it. This is the President of the United States. To the extent that there is confusion, a lack of preparedness, a fear that exists to go into these classrooms, this guy is, and I don't mean this guy, I mean this guy, he's not in my paper. That guy is responsible for it. Here he is calling into Fox News. Sound. Not hearing any sound.
Kids is, will my children actually be going back to school? Could the plan that exists now change later? Teachers unions out there making demands like take the cops out of the school, and we need Medicare for all, and crazy political demands that feel like extortion. Yet to a parent, they want to know, will it be in person? Will it be virtual? If I'm in a private school, are they going to treat me? Do they put the same parameters the governor did on the government schools? What is the latest on your view of how these schools should reopen?
My view is the schools should open. This thing's going away. It will go away like things go away. And my view is that schools should be open. If you look at children are almost, and I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease. So few, they've got
Pause it for 1 second. First off, kids are not immune from this disease. They're not immune. They can catch it, which means they can give it to other people. A. B, the idea that this idiot would go on and say this is going to go away like he did 6 months ago before 100 and almost 60,000 people in this country have died. More than that, who will have health conditions that will last possibly throughout their lives. The idea that he could say that and then pivot to, they're sort of immune. Like, this is, if this guy was not the president of the United States, you would see people contacting the FCC to have this guy arrested for fraud. Go.
Hard to believe. I don't know how you feel about it, but they have much stronger immune systems than we do somehow for this. And they do it. They don't have a problem. They just don't have a problem. I mean, literally, in New Jersey, where you had thousands, many thousands of deaths, the governor, Phil Murphy, told me, good guy, too, by the way, but he told me thousands and thousands of deaths. It was hard hit. There was only one person under the age of 18 who died of this, and I think that person also had diabetes, a young person. It doesn't, and especially when you get younger than that, it doesn't have an impact on them. And I've watched some doctors say they're totally immune. I don't know. I hate to use the word totally because the news will say, oh, he made the word totally and he shouldn't have used that word. But the fact is that they are virtually immune from this problem, and we have to open our schools. Remember this, and I think you believe this, Pete. It's very bad for our country to be locked into a house, an apartment. What's going on with suicide? What's going on with drugs? What's going on with depression? What's going on with so many other things? People lose their jobs. They never get it back. They have a great job. All of a sudden, that little business or that big business is forced to close. This is a very bad thing. This isn't like, oh, we have a choice of one or another. One is good, one is bad.
I mean, the idea that he is leveraging this stuff to say that we should open up businesses too is just, it's insanity. It's insanity.
Well, why do you think they want to open up schools? It's not because they value children as human beings.
Well, on Donald Trump's from Donald Trump's perspective, yes, it is a way to make sure that people are able to go and work. Presumably, there's a lot of people who want to open up schools because, particularly in, for example, in New York, there's literally 200,000 kids who are in the schools, and they don't have, they're homeless. They rely on school for food. I mean, in fact, it's far more than 200,000 who are relying on schools for lunches. It's also their only opportunity to come in contact with a mandatory responder if there's any type of abuse going on with the children. But on top of that, too, for a lot of these kids, it depends on sort of like where you are in, in the context of school. But a year's worth of missed education is really hard to recover from. And of course, the people who would be the hardest to recover from are low-income kids who have less educational opportunities at home or just in their community or wherever it is. And so Donald Trump is not one of them. And I don't know if there's anybody in the White House today who is, but there are very, very sincere and legitimate concerns about kids staying at home. But yes, I would agree. Donald Trump is not one of them. I don't think, unbelievable. Here's I am from Bushwick teacher. I'm a teacher in Bushwick. After speaking directly with state officials, they basically expressed that every school is on their own. The repeated theme was each school needs to make an individual plan based off of individual needs and resources. No plans for additional funding for schools that need. They know teachers will be impacted and contract the virus. They know this will continue to disproportionately impact communities of color. The writing is on the walls. School staff and teachers are expected to sacrifice themselves for the economics of the city. The fact is, teachers are not essential workers because in-person instruction is not essential for human survival. All of that is true. Like I don't know how you can force teachers back into this situation. Like, a lot of the private schools, at least in the city, is my understanding, are going remote instruction only. And I suspect that's because there isn't that leverage. We have this feeling of like, well, it's a public school, and if they're public workers, they got to be there. Period. End of story. And we have that attitude because they're public. I'm not saying we, I'm saying generally. And I don't think that there isn't that attitude in the private schools. And so they don't have the same leverage over the teachers. Teachers are just like,
Well, public school teachers have something that private school teachers don't in large numbers, which is unions. And
correct.
I think we're going to see a lot of activity from teachers teachers coming up. And I think we already are. And it's going to be a crucial factor in what happens next.
Yes. I think it's quite possible that I may not end up going, or my kids may not even have the opportunity to go back to school because the unions might step in and say, like, look, we need to protect our workers.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. And all those quote unquote political demands that the teachers unions are making that they say have nothing to do with health, like Medicare for all and getting the cops out of the schools, cops that have been shown to repeatedly harm the children. That's I would say that's somewhat connected to health.
Well, I would also say you need less people. You want less people in there, and you want less, in the school. Period. And yeah, these. I mean, it's if you have Medicare for all, you have a better confidence that the kids coming into school have gotten medical care. I mean, it's that simple. Like, you want to feel confident that there's not people out there going like, oh, they would have gone to see the doctor, but they didn't want to spend the money. Like it's a crap show. It's a crap show. Here is Trump's understanding, as he called into Fox and Friends again. Here's his understanding of the difference between mail-in voting and absentee ballots. He talked about this yesterday on the show. Here's Donald Trump. He's trying to piece it together because they don't have an argument for this, because there is none.
Mr. President, thanks so much for doing this morning. Can we talk about probably the thing that everybody's talking about today, and that's mail-in voting? What seems to bother you most, and stop me if I'm wrong, is if a state like Nevada or another state just blankets a state with ballots unrequested. And that's different from requesting an absentee ballot because you're concerned about your health or the pandemic. Would you make that? Am I accurate in that dissemination?
No, absentee is okay because you have to go through a process, Brian, and you go through a process and you make a request and they send it to you and you get it and you fill it out, and it's a process and it's a smaller number. What they're going to do is blanket the state. Anybody that ever...
What in that process creates any security whatsoever? Any more security than a ballot being mailed to you with your name on the envelope, your name on the envelope as it returns. It's just that you pull out of that envelope, you put it, your ballot's still secret. Then the ballot comes out in an envelope, an unnamed envelope, and it goes into the thing. There's nothing. There's no difference. There's none. I have voted absentee for, I don't know, half of the last 10 elections. And I voted in the blanket, everybody can vote. They send you a ballot, New York primary. You could just sign up. Same thing. Just mail me the thing. They mailed it to you and that's it. So go.
And how many times did you vote?
And I voted, of course, 12 times in every single election because it's so easy to do that. I just photocopied the ballots and then mailed them all in under names of people I knew who wouldn't vote. Go.
To you and you get it and you fill it out, and it's a process and it's a smaller number. What they're going to do is blanket the state. Anybody that ever walked, frankly, will get one. And the governor's a clubhouse politician. He's somebody that, frankly, was shocking, and shocking what he did, more shocking what he did. Without town halls, without meetings, without the public, they went out and they just approved this ridiculous system. And the post office will never be equipped to handle it. And you see it in New York in a much smaller scale. We have a congressional race, Carolyn Maloney, a congresswoman. It's been 6.5 weeks now. They have no idea what happened. They're thousands of votes off. They're missing votes. They're fraudulent votes. They have to do the election over. There's no way that she can take that election because it's between two Democrats, but I guess he's probably, as the expression goes, more progressive. But she's in trouble, and frankly, they have to do the election over.
But you're suing Nevada, right? You're suing Nevada?
I'm suing. No, but it's the same thing. It's mail-in voting. Paterson, New Jersey. 20% of the votes were either fixed or messed up or missing or fraudulent. And people are in big trouble. The town council, the mailmen, a lot of people are in big trouble. That's Paterson. That's 20% of the votes. You can't do a mail-in vote. Now,
First off, Carolyn Maloney was announced the winner today in the election. Should just note that the tally took far too long, but indeed she was announced the winner. We have multiple states in this country who have mail-in ballots with absolutely no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever.
I like how he likes to throw around the accusation of clubhouse politician too, when he's literally doing international diplomacy at his private club.
Exactly. I wonder if he's actually calling from the golf course. Like, I mean, could we hear in the background? Like, exactly.
But it doesn't really matter. All he has to do is make the Democrats look like they're just as dirty as he is.
Now, here is the problem that Donald Trump had with the messaging on this absentee ballot. Like we mentioned yesterday, he's got a real problem because the attack on mail-in ballots is going to suppress his voters who are elderly, broadly speaking, and tend to mail in their ballots more. And so yesterday he tweeted out, Florida's okay. In Florida, you can mail in your ballot. And here is Brian Kilmeade desperately trying to help the president by explaining the disparity between Trump saying, well, ballots are bad everywhere except for in Florida, where I'm really counting on the old people to send in the ballots.
When it comes to those ballots, what happened in Florida in particular is a lot of seniors who plan on voting for Trump in particular heard the president saying there's going to be fraud and I'm not for the mail-in ballots, and they were throwing them out and they were not going to use them. A lot of seniors need them because of the pandemic we're in the middle of now. They don't want to make themselves susceptible. Number two, there are a lot of people who are older and say, I wasn't going to go to the polls, so if this doesn't work, I might as well not vote at all. And that's why I think the president was alerted to, I think, people misinterpreting what my fear is. The fear is flooding everyone with a ballot when you don't request it, and then people that have passed away years ago are getting these ballots like they got the $1,200 checks. Obviously, they're not living to cash, and they're saying that's laying the foundation. The other thing is there's no one around to count them, and if there's going to be doing it, if there aren't enough people around to count them, they're not going to get it done November 3rd. You have done it before successfully, yes, but not to the tune of 100 million or more. Don't pretend like we can do it. Don't pretend like we're putting down the post office. Nobody is. It is human error. We saw what happened with Bush Gore and the staring at the Chads. Can you imagine doing that in 15, 20 states?
Can you?
I will remind you, the staring at the Chads in the year 2000 was for people voting in person in a ballot that was messed up. And maybe
not everyone had private voting machines in Florida. They just didn't press hard enough.
That is exactly what happened. And frankly, had they had a program of mail-in ballots, the ballots would have gotten to people earlier. They would have said, hey, wait a second, we got a problem here. These are confusing ballots. These butterfly ballots are confusing. And then you would have had the opportunity where election officials could put out notices and mail in to people, hey, here's some special instructions on how to fill out your ballot. But the idea of Brian Kilmeade trying to explain, like, well, they were worried about, elderly people because their ballots are fine. Because, of course, elderly people never, ever end up being targets of fraud or anything like that. So, of course, that's going to be fine with their ballots. And he goes on to say, like, the whole story about the dead people issuing checks. Now, of course, they never cashed them because they're dead. Well, that's also what would happen with a ballot. They wouldn't be voted because they're dead.
I guess it's somewhat encouraging that they think old people are not going to physically go to the polls in Florida. Kind of goes against other news that's been coming out of that state.
Yes, that's actually the most reasonable thing that they could possibly do. Here's Ted Cruz talking about, here's the Republican. Well, the Republican Party seems to want to run on the idea that they should be imposing austerity on people right now. And the Democrats need to get out there and be aggressive and demand they should be on television constantly. And to some extent they are. $600 a week. We're not going to give the American people a pay cut during a pandemic. That's what they should be saying right now. That should be the line. Here's Ted Cruz coming out and complaining that the U.S. government is spending when he voted for a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires that cost this government the record-setting deficit. Now, I'm not too worried about the deficit, but this is his hypocrisy. Play it.
Next week, I'm going to introduce a bill that I'm calling the Recovery Act. That is going to be a whole series of pro-jobs, pro-growth steps that if we're going to take, our focus should be getting people back to work. And right now, the current so-called Republican bill that is going to lose a lot of Republican votes if and when we vote on it is not focused on jobs. Pelosi wants jobs to go away. And right now, basically, the Republican bill took the Nancy Pelosi bill, divided all the numbers by 3, and proposed the same damn thing. We should have different ideas that work. And a final political point.
Cut away. Can you cut to me for a second? Cut back. Like what's funny that Ted Cruz said there that Michael Knowles, the former comedy guy, laughed at.
Sam, I think the direction they use at Daily Wire is like designed to make you ill.
Me personally, yeah,
Yes.
It's just absurd. Wait, continue on with this. So he's just complaining now, and it's also indicative of the Republicans are all over the place and they cannot get it together. But is there any more to what he's saying?
So there's some Republicans who are really scared. We got to do this. We just got to do it. It's an election. You got to spend money. Look, in the battle to be Santa Claus, Republicans will always lose. If suddenly we pony up $3 trillion, they'll go to 4. Like there's no limit. And frankly, show me the voter out there that's really looking for a bunch of cash, that's actually going to vote for the president because of it. If you want someone to bankrupt the country and bankrupt your kids and grandkids in order to get more cash right now, you're going to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
I think it's right. A null set. We should be the party of jobs and growth and prosperity and higher wages.
I think that they've got to run on. The Democrats have got to run on this. The idea that he's going out there and the Republicans. And the problem is when the Democrats agreed to the CARES bill, and even if you feel, which to a certain extent I do, that maybe you had to give, pay homage to the corporate thing to get the relief for actual human beings. I'm agnostic on it, but let me, for the sake of argument, I'm willing to stipulate that you temporarily capped the benefits to people, i.e. the $600 a week, the $1,200 a one time, the eviction moratorium, which I would have liked something more robust there, but you put a timeline on those. What you did not put a timeline on was the free loans to major corporations. And from a political standpoint, just put aside from the policy implications of that, from a political standpoint, you are basically giving a chunk of the entire Republican Party almost, and then even a chunk of the Democrats. You're giving them enough so that they can walk away from the table. They don't have to come back. If you had limited that temporarily, then they'd have to come back too, and you'd have some leverage. But Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they literally, it's as if they always want to put themselves in pushing against the string. Always. So they can push and they can make a show of pushing against the string. Look at, we're pushing. But they wait until it's a string and they don't pull, they push. And they set it up that way every single time. They set themselves up for failure. And I understand, and they think that it is politically expedient. And they may get away with it this time because Donald Trump is so horrible. But it is, it's reprehensible from the perspective of like helping people. They should actually seek leverage.
Yeah, it's almost like helping people is not their first priority.
I mean, the way that they justify it is like, well, we maintain power, and then we will.
For what?
Exactly.
What are they doing with all that political capital? Are they just like keeping it in a vault and swimming around in it every night like Scrooge McDuck?
It's precious.
Honestly, what Pelosi squandered with the House in the last few years, I think should be. I want to read a book on that.
Yes.
Complete defanging of the actual resistance.
Really.
To go back to Ted Cruz for a second, like, did he learn nothing about how Trump cucked him in the primary? Like, a lot of the people who vote for Trump aren't doing so based on some sort of principled fiscal conservatism, right?
Oh, yeah. He's just pretending, though. That's just a branding exercise for him. And I think, he's just basically trying to look here. Let me give you an example. Here's Tommy Tuberville or Tuberville or whatever the guy's name is. How do you pronounce his last name? Tuberville? Tuberville. He is running against Doug Jones in Alabama. He's former football coach. Who is he coach of?
Auburn in Alabama.
Okay, so
but other
former
places as well.
Huge football program out of Auburn. And listen to this is the clip where he's talking about basically, $600 is too much. We may play more of this interview because it's fascinating to listen to this. This guy's up by 17 points in Alabama on an incumbent senator. They just want to vote for a Republican, and there is absolutely nothing that they are looking for to get from their senator. Listen to this conversation with who's this guy named JT in the morning? Is it JT in the morning? Here we go.
Yes, JT in the morning on 105.5 WERC, Birmingham's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's the morning show on Birmingham's WIRC. I'm JT in the morning. We got Tommy Tuberville on. Go ahead. Let's do
it. Home for a while until after Labor Day. I don't know about you, but I don't think Congress needs to be taking any breaks till this whole thing's worked out.
Heaven forbid they put a day's work in, right? We're in tough shape. It's the thing about it is I was up there last week and I read most of the bill, and it's $1 trillion, a lot of money. Of course, the Democrats, they want $3-4 trillion to bail out all the northern states that can't pay their bills because they have no clue how to run a state. And Trump's not going to do that. He's not going to pay them the money. And so probably best they just pack their bags and go home. They're not going to get anything done. The Republicans are working, but the Democrats, they're not going to do anything for Trump. So they're going to stick it to the American people what they're going to do. Let them go home. President Trump will do an executive order. He wants to do the payroll tax elimination, and he can do that on his own. So we probably get more done with just the president running this country. So let the Democrats go home and do whatever they do, which is not govern, which is not try to help the American people. And President Trump can get it done. He'll get enough done. You got to remember now, we still got $1 trillion left that we haven't spent in the other package. So it's not like it's a desperate situation. What happened is we had the elimination of the employment tax this past week, this plus $600, which was way too much. We're having people just sit out not working because they're making more sitting around. We got to go back to work. I'd rather pay them to go to work, pay people more money to go back to work other than sit at home, because we're going to get used to all this, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not a bad theory. Look, you'll get your stimulus money if, in fact, you go back to work. This is not a pass to sit at home and just keep taking the money. Exactly. I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm with you, too, on the president running the country. You're absolutely right. How many times have we had conversations with each other and also with friends and constituents about this country needs to be run like a business. And
this country needs to be run like a business. Well, he's been president for 3.5 years, JT. First off, the president does not have the authority to, and he's talking about not cutting the Social Security tax. He's talking about deferring payment of it. So in other words, not only are you denying the Social Security Trust Fund the ability to earn interest on that money that is in the fund, you're telling people, wage earners, 40% of whom who can't save $400 on their regular paychecks, you're telling them that you're going to have a bill in 4 months or 5 months or 6 months of all these back taxes that you've already spent so that the economy can get picked up. Your wages aren't going to go up. You spent that money. Where's the money going to come from? Where are you supposed to get that money, that you're basically putting a bunch of people in arrears. You're not helping any of the people who are not working when you just say payroll taxes. It's absurd. There's nothing in that proposal. And this guy's out there saying $600 is too much. There was a Yale study that showed that payment did not impact unemployment at all. People are not coming back to work because the work is not there or it's unsafe. You want to pay extra money to essential workers? I'm definitely down for that. Definitely down for that. But you're going to bribe people into going back and risking their health, and not just give them a bribe, but you're going to punish them on the other end so that they're really incentivized? It's effed up.
Yeah, well, I think on a certain level, it will be effective at some point in forcing people back to work if they impose enough austerity on them, right? Yep. Because a lot of people are refusing to go back because these conditions are unsafe. Now, if it were a little fairer, maybe the bosses, controlling these jobs would say, oh, well, we understand that this is an unappealing job right now. We're going to put more safety measures in place, or we're going to raise your wages. We're going to do all the things that would actually make it more appealing and for people to go back to work, because most people do want to go back to work if they can, but they're just they're going to do it the other way. They're going to try to force people by yanking the rug out from under them, and it might be effective. We don't know.
It might be effective, except for there's one other problem. The customers aren't coming back because they don't want to get sick.
Yeah, well, that's true of some industries, but not every industry.
That's
right?
true. But a lot of those industries, I mean, look, if you need your workers in person, chances are that they are either maybe they're manufacturing something, I guess, maybe. But they're probably doing service jobs. And if they're doing service jobs, they're probably public facing.
Well, people are still shopping. People are still shopping at Walmart. People are still shopping at Target.
Right.
I was in a Target upstate just the other day.
And people are working there.
Mm-hmm. People are definitely still shopping at Amazon. If anything, their business is booming right now.
Right. Yep.
One last note on this Tuberville interview is listening back to it. I really like how he highlights, very subtly that he's a college football coach by saying, I'd rather pay them go to work as opposed to like paying them more to go to work, or a bonus for working as an essential worker, as someone whose primary labor force behind his work was unpaid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to pay people to go to work. You don't want them to work for free. That's so nice of you.
I mean, that's his expectation.
Let's have some good news. Here's a clip of Cori Bush. This is her after winning, basically being declared the winner of her primary. It's exciting. She was the first candidate, I believe, that Justice Democrats endorsed and supported in 2018. She lost in 2018. She came back and she won in 2020. She will be a congresswoman. It's a very blue district. She is unseating a 10-year incumbent who basically inherited that seat from his dad. So there's been a Clay in this seat for, I think, 40 or 50 years. This guy is also the head of the Financial Services Committee. And so we're going to see people like Katie Porter, AOC. Who else was it that is on that committee? Bump up one. I don't have the name on that. But this is exciting. Check it out.
We've been called radicals, terrorists. We've been dismissed as an impossible fringe movement. That's what we are. But now we are multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-generational, multi-faith mass movement, united in demanding change, in demanding accountability, in demanding that our police, our government, our country recognize that Black lives do indeed matter, and that these are not just words or symbolic gestures, but with concrete action, and we will measure those with our outcomes.
She also Black Lives Matter activist. She got a lot of pressure during the campaign to sort of undersell that, and she refused to do that.
She's also been attacked for her support of BDS.
Yep,
which means she's extra cool.
We talked about that yesterday with Nomi. They basically put out a flyer where they had her with Linda Sarsour, and we're talking about BDS. And apparently, they also darkened her picture on the thing. I'm not sure what the hell that was about, but
I think we do.
Well, yeah. I mean, her opponent was black too. Like, I think there's some strategy that we like that is not as obvious to us. It is an attempt to start another conversation. Like when they elongated John Ossoff's nose in his when Purdue did that in his race against him for the Senate in Georgia, that just happened. That to me wasn't about the idea was they wanted to get caught so that the story gets out there that Ossoff is Jewish. Right? Like, so they didn't want to call him a Jew. They wanted to do something subtle that the story will be, they did this because he's Jewish. And they just want people to know that he's Jewish. And without it, so they would rather, it's almost as if what they do is they are willing to absorb a little criticism of being anti-Semitic or racist as a way of alleviating the racist or anti-Semitic impulses of their voters. So their voters can act based upon those impulses, but not have to own them. Because on some level, the perpetrator of that ad is the owner of it. It's that, I feel, is like the dynamic. But nevertheless, we have another vote now, and you had Nancy Pelosi said there are just 4 votes. She was talking about the squad. Tlaib, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, all have made it through their primaries. Ilhan Omar is next. Go support her. But now they're being joined. They're being joined by Bowman and is it gosh, I can't remember her name in Chicago. Lipinski's gone. And now Cori Bush and Mondaire Jones and maybe Torres. I don't know. We'll see, but still an upgrade from and there's going to be a couple more, maybe Eastman. This is going to be Marie Newman in Chicago. They've got 6, 7, 8, 9 votes at least now. And that is going to encourage them to vote more as a block. And those 9 votes, that they could be a hinge at one point for a bill going up or down. And so this is good news. I mean, it's going to take some time, but it's good news.
The squad's turning into a team.
Exactly. Well put. Like a platoon. They've gone from a squad to a platoon. Dennis Prager, here he is. This is such a liar. It's also like it reminds me of like of Charlie Kirk going around saying like, mask, you don't need to, there's no evidence. And of course he won't go in and get his hair cut. Here's Dennis Prager. And I got news for you. Dennis Prager is social distancing. He is social distancing. This guy, this old guy, is not going out there and hanging out with everybody. Here he is.
Yes, that's right. If masks work, why is there that's right. Why can't you have your nails done? That is correct. Yes, especially toenails. She's in another time zone when she does your feet. Because they don't give a damn about the little man. The man or woman running a nail salon. They don't give a damn about them. In fact, they believe it. They know on some conscious level that people who own their own businesses probably vote Republican. They want to keep Walmart in business. The Democrats are the party of big business. That's why big business is all left. Why does big business always take a left-wing position? Because big business is on the left. They're in cahoots. You can go into Walmart, but you can't go into Fred's Bakery. Screw Fred. That Americans are not angry about this draconian, anti-rational policy, that's as disturbing to me as the policy itself. I'm angry on your behalf if you own a restaurant or a nail salon. I have my hair cut. It's like going to it's as close as I can imagine what a speakeasy was like during Prohibition. Say a code, the drapes are down, the door is locked. What do you have to say? What is it? Swordfish? Is that the Marx Brothers famous code word? Swordfish?
So he's going in there. He's getting secret haircuts. I wonder if he's wearing a mask in there, or if he's just going in and not worrying about it. He's going down to Fred's barber shop. Is that where he's going? And Fred's there, like behind like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a minute.
Well, I guess we'll see if he's going to put his money where his mouth is and die of COVID.
Exactly.
What leftist policies do big businesses have other than like woke posturing of like, we don't want to, upset, the population?
Citibank stands with the movement for Black Lives.
It's just irritating because when the right wing can make hay off of the fact that, both parties don't really care about the mom and pop compared to the chain. And that's what we're seeing in this pandemic. It's evident to people. And we can't get money out the door for unemployed people. It is disgusting. And this creep that would make all of these things way worse gets to opine about it. It turns my stomach.
It's true.
He acts like the only way for people to get money is by working for a wage. And that's just not true. We have lots of different ways to get money to people.
And we just did it. And it worked. Poverty in this country was at its lowest ebb when people got those checks. Lowest ebb. All right, let's take just a couple of calls. I got to get out of here in 5 minutes. Couple of calls and then some IMs. Sorry, folks. I know. Calling from a 608 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
That me?
Yeah, 608.
Woo! My name is Ben. I'm calling from Wisconsin. One of the first-time, long-times, I guess.
Ben, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I had two questions, but I think we'll just do one more relevant to current events. Regarding Cori Bush's election, there's a lot of talk right now about how AOC and some of the other progressives didn't endorse her. And, there's some concern about that on Twitter about, doing all that sort of thing. And on the one hand, I think it's important that, progressives have solidarity with their other elected officials, but I'm wondering if there is a silver lining to this, mainly being that I'm worried that, we have a situation where, progressives are tied all to like one or two important figures in the party, and, they become like kingmakers rather than having this sort of distributed effect of, having support all around and where there's no one weak point. So the Republicans would take any opportunity, I feel like, to if they could find a scandal or something and get like one or two of these people out, then that would like destroy the whole thing. So it's where if we have it distributed, that'd be better.
I think your point is a good one, but let's not, let's be clear here. The reason why there was no why you did not get endorsements from sitting Congress people, I think Jamal Bowman was the only one who did. I think.
Well, yeah, because she had the issue with the committee as well, where she was trying to. AOC was in a tentative position too, so I understand why she may have opted out not for that one.
Well, I think it's also because of the CBC.
Yeah,
the bottom line is the CBC has been pushing back against this. The reality is there are members of the Congressional Black Caucus who, in my opinion, there are members who have not only are not only corporatists but also neglect their constituents, and but it is very difficult dynamic to come out against a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. I think this guy's dad actually even started it. And
really? I did not know that.
Yeah. I think Clay started. I think his dad started it. I think it was. I
feel like that's got to be really in and of itself, isn't it?
Founding members were Shirley Chisholm, William Clay, John Conyers, Ron Dellums, Charles Diggs, George Collins, and others. And so, I think that there's a certain amount, Maxine Waters, Clyburn. I mean, there was, I don't know if they were the ones who started, but I think that's a big part of it. And, you got guys like Meeks in Queens is another one. When AOC was on the program, she made this point. There are people who join the Progressive Caucus, and there's no litmus test. There are people in safe blue seats. Many of those, some of them anyways, are in the Congressional Black Caucus, and they are in safe seats. They are a member of the caucus. They get support from that caucus. There is a presumption that they are working on behalf of their constituents' needs, and they are not. And these are the people who need to be knocked off first. Because there's the most opportunity to, and also because they are giving cover to the more, ostensibly other, they're giving cover to people who are ostensibly less progressive than they are, but in fact are not any less progressive. They're giving them cover.
They move the center.
Exactly. And so now why they didn't do it is because they're walking a tightrope between not wanting to alienate the Congressional Black Caucus and also wanting to do this bit by bit. So that's tricky. And that's what's so good about an organization like the Justice Democrats, because they have the ability, they both have those allyships with those genuinely progressive Congress people, but they also have the independence to be seen as, operating without that influence.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's what's so good about folks like Justice Democrats and DSA running candidates of color, right? Because you are not taking away from representation.
Exactly.
But you are adding to the material benefits given to all people, but, disproportionately Black and brown people who are disproportionately poor.
Appreciate the call. Thanks. All right, folks, I'm sorry. That's it for calls. I'm going to take 5 IMs and then we got to get out of here because I'm late. JJ Cool. Hi, Sam. There are an infinite number of reasons why we'll all miss Michael. Well, I have one very specific reason today, that, of course, being we will never get to hear his impression of you talking about a bidets being a life-changing experience.
Oh.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, my tushy is so clean.
Zambri.
So scared.
Zambri. For years, Sam, I've been plagued with a filthy ass. No more. Thank you. Cold feet chowder, Pac-Man at 9. Yeah, I know. Thomas Minneapolis. Of all the countries that had this to happen, to Lebanon does not deserve this crashed economy due to greedy capitalists and constant factions at war. Nothing to do with everyday people and life there. Plus, COVID hit them hard. My girlfriend's family all lives there, and they're trying to find a safe donation link or process that will not get skimmed by the government or corrupt organization. But due to the economy, it's a big challenge. I'll email the show if we find. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Horrible. Pro Grande, Sam, George Jr.'s endlessly berated by Michael's Barbara Bush was peak Majority Report impression and improv. Can we get a montage, please? I think I can find that one. That is a really good one. We should find that one and maybe put together like a sort of a best of type of stuff like that. Don Jr. Sam, I'm triggered. That Axios interview was a total disgrace. The fake news is praising little Jonathan for being short with my dad and asking so-called follow-up questions. My dad's a straight shooter. Okay, I'm not going to read all that, Don Jr., but I appreciate it. Silver Ball Stud, Sam, KCMO is Kansas City, Missouri, and KCK is Kansas City, Kansas. And we are the real heartland, the ventricles and the atria, if you will. We voted to, admittedly, only in one state per Kansas city. And vicariously feeling Cori Bush's win for the state of MO. An interesting read in Mother Jones suggests it was playing with fire for the Democrats to hope for Kobach in this Kansas primary, that he could win the general anyway, and then we'd be stuck with him. Indeed, Marshall won every county west of Topeka, but Kobach's counties were the suburbs. Marshall seems every bit as right-wing and just more quiet about it. So which is really worse? I don't know. All right, 2 more. Assy McGee, can you share a funny dating story? No. Jonathan Armstead. They'd all be old these days. I hope people are taking out the post office problems with those responsible and not the middlemen. I ordered a poster for the film Attack the Block on July 4th from a rare movie memorabilia eBay store. Seller sent to priority mail. It didn't show up within the estimated 1 to 3 days. I finally got customer care on Monday. The package arrived yesterday after sitting in the post office for weeks. Seller emailed to say he was happy I didn't ask for a refund and told me after doing this for a decade, he'd been losing business recently because of how slow the mail had been. This is insane. Yes, do not take this out on the postal workers. Show them support, please. Solidarity with letter carriers and postal workers. Hang in there. Hopefully the cavalry will be coming soon. Jamie, Matt, Brendan, good job, guys. Have fun tomorrow. We will see you later.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and